So we're going to fly another approach today. This will be a follow-on from the previous video, just to show some more of the capabilities of the Twin Otter to fly on instruments. This is going to be another ILS approach. We're sitting on the ground at Fair Oaks at the moment in the southeast of England. We're going to take off and fly to London City Airport. We're going to do the ILS approach into runway 09. Now you won't see a Twin Otter flying into London City Airport. The airport has a list of approved aircraft types and the DHC-6 is not on that list. The DHC-7 is on that list. That was the last aircraft that de Havilland Canada made before it was sold to Boeing, and the successor to the DHC-6. But the criteria for certifying aircraft to fly into London City are, well, twofold. First of all, I think most significantly, you've got noise abatement. The Twin Otter is clearly a noisy aircraft compared to its successor, the Dash 7. But the other criterion for approval to fly into London City is the airfield has an unconventionally steep approach. The aircraft needs to be capable of flying a 5.5 degree glide slope, which of course the Twin Otter is. So we're going to fly an ILS approach into runway 09, but there's a few extra things we're going to do in this flight. This is the IAP chart. Fair Oaks is off this chart. We're off here to the west. So we're going to fly onto the chart at the Biggin VOR. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fly to this VOR, and then from there we're going to fly to this hold at, the hold is called Alkin, and it's the entry point to that hold is at the Alkin intersection. We'll join the hold, which is a conventional racetrack hold. We're going to fly there at 4,000 feet, so we'll enter the hold at 4,000 feet. We might fly one orbit, and then we'll exit the hold and fly towards London City Airport on the ADF beacon, or rather the NDB that's on the airfield. That's the LCY NDB, and we need to fly that on a QDM of 323 degrees. That's a magnetic heading, so we intercept that heading as we leave the hold. The initial approach fix for the ILS approach is overhead the airfield, or overhead that LCY beacon in fact. Then everything else is kind of similar to what we did in the previous video. We fly outbound, then we do a reversal and intercept the localizer and glide slope, and we land. So a few steps along the way using different equipment or extra equipment to what we used in the previous video. You know, if you look at this chart in detail, there's a lot of restricted areas. For example, there's a restricted area over the City of London. We've got Hyde Park. There's Belmarsh Prison has got a small restricted area. None of these really apply to us because, you know, if we were doing this for real, we'd have an ATC clearance, and most of these apply to helicopters that are flying without a specific clearance. But we're going to be using, as I say, some extra equipment. Notably, I'll just take you around for orientation. I made a couple of changes since the last video. We've got the ADF radio up here now, so we tune that in here. We've got DME is on the panel down here at the top of the engine panel, and we've only got one DME display. We had two before, which was a bit of a cheat, so we've only got DME 2, so that's the DME that's slaved to the NAV2 radio that also drives this OBI here. I think that's the only difference from last time. So let's get set up and we'll get underway. Okay, we're ready to fly this. We can do some setup before we leave the ground. So we're going to set up the radios as far as we can. I'm going to set up the ILS, which is 111.15. So we'll do that before we set off. Now we're not going to be able to ident that until we get in the air, but at least it's set up on the radio. We can set up the NAV2 radio to be the Biggin VOR, which is 115.1, so we set that up here. 115.1, swap that in. We are picking up the Biggin VOR from the ground. Let's see if we can ident it before we take off. So we've got the VOR identified. We can set that up, we've centered that up because we just want to fly directly towards that VOR after takeoff. So we center it up, we've got a 2 indication, and it's got us pretty much heading due east. We're heading west here, we're going to be taking off in that direction, so we're going to do a turn around to the left after takeoff. We need to set up the ADF radio to the LCY NDB, which is on the London City airfield. That's our initial approach fix. So that's on 322 on the ADF radio up here. So we dial that in 179022. Again, we can't ident that till we get in the air. That's pretty much all the setup we can do for now. We want to get the ATIS just so we know what the weather's doing. So with active sky, that's 122.0.
Echo, Golf, Tango, Foxtrot, airport information, Kilo 1015, Zulu, weather, wind 208 at 9, visibility 10, sky condition 1200, scattered 1900, scattered, temperature 15, dew point 13, QNH 1010, advise on initial contact, you have information, Kilo, Echo, Golf, Tango, Foxtrot, airport information.
Okay, so that's everything we need for now. So let's get started. We're going to take off. It's kind of a short runway here at Fair Oaks, and we've got trees at the end, so we probably want all the usable power we can muster to take off safely. Let's roll. We're just going to stay on the controls till we clear these trees. The weather's nice and clear here, at least at this low altitude. Okay, we're just going to start that turn to the east. Get the flaps in. So that's the direction we pretty much want to be heading in. We can go onto autopilot now, put it on heading, hold. Looking at the VOR, once we're a little bit off centre, we just centre that up again. So we need to be on about 095 track. So we're heading 095, but we've got a bit of a crosswind from the right, 11 knots is showing on here. So we want a bit of a wind correction for that. We're losing visibility already. Now en route and into that hold at Alkin, we want to be flying about 4,000 feet. I've decided, so I'm going to dial that in on the altitude alert. Put that in as a target. Pretty much in the clouds now. So let's see if we can ID that ADF beacon from here. LCY. Okay, we've got an ID on the ADF beacon, so we're okay with that. Maybe we can ID the ILS from here. That was the ILS, so we've got that as well. Everything's ID'd now, we're okay with that. Let's just set up the cruise, come back on the power. We don't want to be going too fast. So we're established at 4,000 feet. We can set the props. That'll do for now. Now we're on that easterly heading towards the Biggin VOR. That's on the Biggin Hill airfield, and that VOR has a DME associated with it, which we can see on DME 2 over here. So we're showing 15.7 miles to Biggin Hill. So what can we see? Should have Heathrow out to the left, but we're not really seeing that. So 13.5 miles to Biggin Hill, we should see that soon. When we get to Biggin, we're going to then fly outbound on the 06 radial towards that entry point to the hold. The entry point is at the intersection Alkin, and that's 7 miles DME from the Biggin VOR. So we can see Biggin on the GPS, just as a check, we're actually heading in the right direction. The other thing we can do is we can set up the final approach course on the HSI, which is 094 degrees. So if I just dial that in now, 09, 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't need that yet, but we'll need that on final approach. And you should see we are getting an indication on the ADF indicator now. What we can also do is set up the ADF card so that that QDM 323 that we need for our approach to the airport is set. So that's set at the top. If we do that, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. So what that means is, if we're approaching the airport on the correct heading, we should be showing 322 on the HSI, and the needle on the ADF will be pointing directly up. It's kind of like flying a radial to a VOR, except it's not transmitting the radial. We have to kind of figure that out with reference to the other instruments. Okay, it's 7.2 miles to Biggin. So we're off track now. We're drifting. That crosswind's really picked up. We're showing almost 30 knots there, almost a direct crosswind. So that's why we're showing quite a lot of drift. To get to Biggin, we should now be steering almost 110. Well, we should be heading 110. Should probably be steering further off. Okay, that's not a problem because we can see Biggin Hill airfield on the nose visually. So I'm now going to set up the departure radial to 06. And then just wait till we get overhead the airfield. You should see it right there. Once we lose visibility at the most inopportune times. So I think we're going to start a turn onto that heading now. So we're going to turn onto 060 to match that radial. We get from indication. That should centre up pretty much. And that crosswind now becomes more or less a tailwind, so we shouldn't need too much of a wind correction. We'll just finesse that. We are drifting left a bit, so we'll put in a bit of correction there. Then we've got to start to watch this DME. When we get to 7 miles on the DME, that's the start of the hold. What we can do is we can actually find that the intersection should be listed on the nearest there we go, nearest intersection, Alkin. So if we put that in as a direct 2 on the GPS, we can see that just as a cross check. And we get a readout, so that readout will fall as this readout of the DME rises. So just under 4, this is just over 3, and they should add to 7 miles DME. So 3.5, 3.5, 7. We're still a little bit left of track, so we're going to give it another 5 or 6 degrees. So we're gradually creeping back on track on that 06 radial. When we get to Alkin, we're going to continue on a 060 radial. To enter the hold, we're going to fly a parallel course to the return leg of that racetrack. We're going to do it for 1 minute. So we're going to start the timer. I'm just checking actually, it's important that when we enter that hold we're on the right position. So the radial, we're tracking 065 at the minute, so we're pretty much on the radial. We want to come off about 5 degrees. So we need to start the timer now. We're at Alkin. So we fly that for 1 minute, then we're going to do a 180 degree turn to the left. But we're going to continue that turn through 45 degrees, then we're going to intercept the return leg to join the pattern. That's the plan. We hope it's going to work out. So it's half a minute to go before we start that turn. It's a shame the holds are not shown on the GPS. That will make it a little clearer. So we're tracking good. We're right on the money. We're coming up to that turn now. Okay, we start that turn to the left. So that reversal should take 1 minute. We keep a look at the stopwatch because it's a 2 minute turn. That means it's 3 degrees per second. That must be the Dartford Bridge that we've just done. It's just going underneath the nose. River Thames, of course. So we want to keep that turn going. We're on 45 degrees. Then we should intercept the 0624 radial on this instrument. So if we watch the VOR, that needle should creep back to centre. At the point where that centres, we want to be turning onto a 240 heading, and then we'll be on that return leg of the pattern, and we should be intercepting that right about the Alkin entry point again, which would show us on the GPS, and we should also get 7 on the DME from Biggin. Got 1 mile, no sorry 2 miles to Alkin, and again we've got that 2 miles is shown here as the distance from that point. The DME here is the distance from the Biggin VOR. Okay, that's creeping a little bit more assertively to the centre now. So we're going to think about turning on to 240. So that's pretty good. We're established in that hold now. Got a bit of a wind correction angle to the left. And instead of joining the hold, we're immediately going to exit it. We're going to turn on to, according to this exit procedure, 357 degrees right now. That's basically a north heading. And we want to intercept that 323 QDM to London City Airport. So we can see the ADF indicators swinging around now. The golf course below. Okay, now we want to turn on to 323, and the pointer should be directly up. The other thing we want to do is we want to start descending. We're at 4,000 feet. We need to be at 2,000 feet when we reach the airport. So we'll probably have to do that quite assertively. Not very far to go. Now we're a little bit left of where we want to be, so we're going to give a little bit of correction to the right. The big in VOR is no longer any use to us. We want the DME for the ILS beacon, so we have to dial in that. Remember, we only have DME 2. We're not showing the DME from what we've got dialed in on nav 1, so we need to dial that frequency in on nav 2 as well, 111.15. So there we go. So the DME now is showing 3.7 miles to run to London City. There's London City Airport just there. Now we're right of track. It's kind of bumpy here. So we should turn on to 323 now, and that's we should have set 2,000 on the minimum descent altitude. Just in time. Need a little bit of power back in. So that's a nice view of the London skyline and of the airfield. That's a bit faster than I intended to go. You can see how bumpy this is. This would be difficult flying by hand. Okay, so we're at 2,000 feet, 1.3 miles. So our initial approach fix is overhead the airfield. And we're actually showing the DME from the ILS 27 beacon, which is not the same as the, so that's at this end of the runway, not this end of the runway, but we're not going to quibble about that. So I think we're overflying the field now. We've got to start the procedure proper, which is we turn onto a heading of 290. And then we fly outbound for 5 nautical miles. Now again, I'm saying heading, you know, given the wind, we've got 20 knot crosswind from over here. So we want to be tracking 290, which we're not at the minute, we're tracking 304. So we'll give it a correction angle. Got a nice view of the skyline. You should see the London Eye, but it's probably too far in the distance and probably hidden by this altitude by some of the other buildings. We're going a little bit too slow for comfort there. I was doing too much talking there and let the speed went down to almost 75 knots, which is too low. It is very, very bumpy here. That ASI is not sitting still at all. Okay, we're at 4 miles on the DME. When we get to 5 miles, we're going to start our turn round, intercept the localizer. There's a really good view of the skyline. So we've got the Shard, the Gherkin, Tower Bridge, we've got the, what is that, City Hall? I don't know what that's called, the headlight. Okay, that's 5 miles. So we're now turning to the left. So we want a heading of 110 degrees. And we can go for approach hold. Nav and glide slope are armed. There's the Shard. Well, in one sense, and there's Tower Bridge, nice shot of Tower Bridge there. In one sense it's a shame that it's clear here, because we don't get to do the breakout over the field. There's the Millennium Dome. But in another sense we get a nice panoramic experience of London. Canary Wharf right ahead. This is the reason that on this approach we've got localizer capture. We're cautioned not to descend below 1500 feet before DME of 2.5 miles, because we run the risk of crashing into the Canary Wharf towers. So we're at 4 miles currently. We're still well below the glide slope. The glide slope's coming down rapidly. We're going to capture that. That's just a nice view. We've got the glide slope now. Really I should be flying and not talking. So we're going to come down on that power. I think flying this approach in the Twin Otter we should probably slow down earlier, because now we're on the glide slope. We're coming down fast, but we're still going far too quickly to put the flaps down. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to put all the flaps down. You can see we've got a substantial crosswind from the right, because there's some smoke coming or steam from there. So this is the final approach. And we're kind of too high. That speed control really ought to have been better. We're going to make it. This is a Twin Otter after all. But I think we're doing more than the 5.5 degrees. I'm showing 10 degrees nose down on the... I'm going to come off there and just try and slow down a bit more using the rudder. I don't have any AI traffic on this airfield, I don't know why. Okay, a bit of a sloppy approach there because I'm trying to slow down at the last minute. We'll see if we can keep it on the runway at least. Okay. Well, that was half the crosswind's fault and half my fault for being very sloppy. But we just about kept it on the runway. Oh, it is wanting to swing though. Do a bit of reverse to help us out. If we just stop dead, I think that's going to be the safest. Okay, we've arrived. London City Airport. So there it was, Fair Oaks to London City, using some instrument procedures. Pretty ropey landing, but it might be nice to do that again. I did it on real weather for whatever was up there this morning, and the weather was actually quite clear. It would have been nice to do that. Well, I mean, we got some nice views of London, but I might do that again in heavy weather. It'd be nice to do that with very low or zero visibility, and then break out with a very low ceiling. But you can see we've got our hands full flying this even on autopilot. I think what I might do next is make a video trying to fly one of these procedures by hand, and I can pretty much guarantee that's going to be a bit of a disaster, because I'm not very good at flying the Twin Otter, but it's very, in my experience, very difficult aircraft to fly consistently by hand, and so I tend not to really do that. No problem flying the takeoff and the final approach by hand, but we might give that a go.